Welcome to the Hud Grad Club. I'm Chris Webb, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Career Consultant with the University of Huddersfield's Careers Employability Service. And, full disclosure, I'm also a University of Huddersfield graduate. So I've generally got pretty positive things to say about both the institution and any of our graduates. But don't take my word for it. In this podcast, we'll be meeting different members of the University of Huddersfield's global alumni community, finding out what makes them tick, about their experiences during their time at the university and their career journeys since completing their studies. Join us as we explore the inspiring, innovative and diverse range of individuals that make up the Hud Grad Club. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hud Grad Club. And Emily, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Great to kind of have you here today. It is a Friday, as we've talked about, so in good spirits. And we start the podcast, as always, by finding out just a bit more about you. So for any of our kind of viewers or listeners who've not sort of met you or come across you before, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at the moment and what you studied at the university.
I studied the childhood studies at university, graduated in 2019, and then went on to work for an organisation called the Growth Company. I've done various roles while there, but my current role is a very fancy title of Partnership and Integration Manager, which essentially, just to sort of sum it up with a nutshell, it is a lot of, working with people essentially and managing sort of stakeholder relationships, ensuring the relationship's mutually beneficial. We're doing what we're contracted to do, but also if there's a gap in our service, ensuring that we're pulling in partners to fill that gap and provide the best service to our service users.
Fantastic. Very good nutshell. Always difficult, isn't it, to sum up your job in sort of 30 seconds.
Especially when it's got, quite an elusive title as that.
Yes, I know all about that myself, being an alumni engagement career consultant, but that's a conversation for another time. Brilliant, fantastic introduction, Emily. So we kind of kick off the podcast each time with our greatest HUD story ever told section. So this is an opportunity for you to reflect a little bit on your time at university, any kind of key memories or special memories that perhaps kind of come to mind. So do you have a particular greatest HUD story? And I guess, what sort of took you to the university in the first place?
So I think definitely what brought me towards university, because to be honest, when I was at college, I was dead against it. I wanted to go down a completely different route to what I either studied at university or what I'm doing now. I do not need university for that. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to work. And it's not in any way that I'm discouraging that. I think for some people that is absolutely the right track, and I'm not someone who fully believes absolutely everybody needs to go to university if it's not right for them. But I did. I went into work and I started a job, and at the start it was fantastic. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. I really was doing what I planned to do. It was absolutely I was getting loads of support, training up, and it was great. And then there was sort of a shift within the company, and that support and this was, to be honest, still fairly early on into me starting in this career. This shift happened, and that support that I was getting it disappeared. And there was work being put on me that I was being very open, saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I've not been trained to do that. And then it just sort of got more and more. I kept getting that response of, I'm really sorry, we're too busy. We don't have time to show you how to do this. Can you not just work it out? And I was ending up starting early, finishing late. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself because I felt that was what was expected. And I ended up having, I wouldn't go as far as to say a full-on breakdown, but I did. I completely collapsed into myself. I was mentally and physically exhausted. I was not in a happy place at all. And I just ended up going, I can't do this anymore. I just cannot put myself through this. And I left that role, but felt very sort of lost in a sense, because I thought this is what I was going to do and this is where I was going, and it just didn't work out. And I was like, well, what next? That's what I'd been planning for, that's what I'd been doing. And me and my family sailed, actually. It's something that we'd done for a long time, and they ran various, training programs to teach people, and I got really stuck into that, and I put a lot of my time into that, particularly into the kids club they ran. And so many of the parents were like, Emily, you're in your absolute element here. You absolutely love it. You're fantastic with the kids. They all love you. You need to go into working with children and young people. And that's what started sort of set the ball rolling. And I started looking at things, and I'd noticed that, there's an open day at the University of Huddersfield, which is down the road from where I lived, tomorrow. So I was like, I need to go. So I went, and that's sort of, I got an overview of childhood studies. I thought, this is absolutely fantastic. This is something that I'm interested in. I've got a passion for. I know I'm enjoying working with children and young people because I'm doing it at the moment. And I got chatting to one of the tutors, James Reed, Jim, and he just was the nail in the coffin is usually a bad term, but it was that last thing to go, you know what, yes, you did, because he just full on really was yeah, you are absolutely the right person for this type of course. I think you'll get a lot from it. And so I did, and made my application, and I got my offer. And that September I started. So yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Fantastic. And what was that experience like then at the university? As you said, kind of coming from a position where maybe you were never necessarily expecting that you might want to go there, and obviously having come from a background where you'd gone into work, from finishing your sort of secondary education. How did you then find the experience of university itself?
It was odd, I'd say. I don't think I went in being a very stereotypical student. Essentially, I think it did sort of change my perception of how I was treating this. But what I found was really good with the University of Huddersfield is that the culture's very much a case of that whatever your journey is, that's fine, and we'll support you with that. Because I was going in thinking that this is because I'd had that affirmation of I'd had that time out of education to find what I really wanted to do. I wanted to put my all into it, essentially, and I really wanted to do well and succeed. And there was so much support there for me, and I think really that was the best thing for me. I think if I'd gone straight after college into just something, I don't think I would have had the same experience. And so I'm glad that I went through that with hindsight, even though it might not have been the best thing at the time.
And I mean, you mentioned sort of earlier that obviously childhood studies, you'd kind of really done some thinking about how that kind of connected to your interests, your values, the things that you did enjoy doing. And as you mentioned sort of right at the top of the podcast, the role that you're sort of doing now is a little bit removed from that. Absolutely. But perhaps somewhat connected. So tell us a little bit more about that journey sort of through the degree, I guess, and how it's kind of led you to where you are now.
So it was sort of partway through, I realised that there was quite a bit of course content that was focused towards the younger end of childhood, sort of, your primary, your nursery ages. But there was a few modules that looked at sort of the full spectrum, so right from 0 to 18. And I was finding myself being more drawn towards the topics that focused on that higher end, so the more the teenagers, the young adults. And then when I went on to do my placement as part of my degree, I worked in a secondary pupil referral unit. And during that, it really sort of confirmed that this is where I'm happier. I'm much happier with this age group. I really feel that from what I've gone through personally through my life is going to really help me inform how I can really support and make a difference to these individuals. And I found that it sat better with what I wanted to do. I think that I think I wanted to really be support people at that point where in the past I might not have had that support. I really struggled as a teenager with various different things. There was quite a lot that happened when I was growing up. Not, without sounding like I had a not happy childhood, I did, but I lost a very close friend when I was a teenager. They passed away, and there was. I struggled quite a lot with my mental health, and I think that sort of led me into being more drawn towards that, because I was like, I could be there to support someone where it would have been really nice if I'd had that outside person there, because it can be funny with family. You sort of you end up being like, I don't know where I stand, as much as they want to help, but and that ended up then leading me to working. So following on from that role at the pupil referral unit, I then ended up working in foundation in colleges, working with children and young people who had EHCP, so educational healthcare plans, and on there I was with a few young adults really who had not the greatest upbringings in the world. It had put them at a disadvantage educationally, and the work I was doing with them and the transformation I was seeing with these young men in how their perception towards things like education and the community and work and things was amazing. And then that sort of led me on to working more with the sort of the young adults, and then going into working with adults in general who are on unemployment programs.
Wow, fantastic. So I mean, it's really interesting to hear that, I guess, almost like iteration of how you sort of took the childhood studies degree and the bits that you enjoyed from it, or where you felt you could make a difference, and how that sort of kind of incrementally, I guess, led to those different sort of roles that you got onto. And I believe your role now is kind of, as you were saying earlier, much more of sort of a partnerships-based role and less of perhaps that kind of frontline support. So I guess, tell us how that's sort of been, and how you got into that, and how that, I guess, feels different, I suppose, to what you've done before.
So there are elements that I think definitely pull into it, but it's in sense of that it is still working with people. Essentially, it's just people in a different context. So when I first started at the growth company, I was very much on the front line. I was working with adults, I believe, that were 18 plus, who were unemployed and needed some form of skills training, whether that was a skill in a qualification or whether that was skills in sort of like your soft skills, like how to write a CV, interview side of things. And I was the soft skills side, so I was working with them to give them sort of the basic skills to be able to go into a job. So how to write a CV, that confidence, how, what's an appropriate way to dress, what actually, if you're wanting to go down this career, what do you need to be able to get there, that side of things. And it meant that I was sort of looking at different sort of, it was still using those sort of the knowledge of the degree of, that understanding of development, that understanding of learning. How do people take on that information? What the different learning styles people have that we were looking at as children, but actually it carries with you right up until adulthood. So I was applying that theory. And then as well on the sort of the engagement, how do you engage someone? How do you keep someone interested in what you're wanting to do? Again, we were looking at that in a childhood context, in that how do you engage a child in that development? But now I was looking at how do I engage adults in this in the same sense. And following on from that, I ended up getting involved just as a bit of a sort of an addition to the role I was doing, was with partnerships and integration, but on a much lesser level than I am doing now, after a colleague moved on to a different contract. So I took on part of that role. And again, I was just seeing this relationship building, this engaging people, this, the sort of educating people about the service we do. It's all that stuff coming up again. It's just coming up again in a different context. So where it's gone from children to unemployed adults, it's now going to professionals and organizations and things, and it's still that sort of chain of the same skills. It's just being able to differentiate and apply it to the context and change your approach depending on who you're speaking to.
I mean, do you think we sometimes don't talk enough about that transferability and adaptability of certain degree subjects or, particular skill sets? Because I think, we talked about it off the podcast, but that idea of kind of childhood studies, people perhaps have a very particular idea in their heads of the type of jobs that leads to. And of course, as you're saying, actually, there's a huge amount of transferability in terms of what you've learned, the knowledge and the skills.
Absolutely. Definitely. No, I completely agree. I do think there needs to be a bit more of a wider conversation about that just because you've done this one degree, it doesn't mean that that's what you've got to do. There's amazing how many things you learn. Like I remember modules I did, like we looked at policy and how that affected things. That's still I work on a DWP contract. That's I'm seeing it in practice. We looked at things like I did a leadership module. Again, it's coming to this, essentially it's not, as much as I'm not I've led classrooms, I've led teams of people. It's, it all comes in that practice, and it's by thinking that you sort of, oh right, I've done childhood studies, I've got to go work in a school, or I've got to go work in with children, or I've got to go work in a nursery. That it's sort of limiting your options, where actually there's a whole world of opportunities there that all of these skills can come into, and you might find that this is the best degree you could have done because it ends up supporting you in a way that you would have never thought in a completely different industry, because it's amazing how much things link in.
Well, as you say, it almost does yourself a disservice, doesn't it? If you kind of narrow that vision just to those roles that you think could connect to it, which is really interesting. I mean, great reflections, Emily. I mean, you mentioned there about, obviously already in your career today, you've had those kind of sort of pivot points where, you've been going in one direction and you've thought, actually, well, this isn't the right thing for me, and changed and kind of sort of, I guess, reconsidered, what you were doing. Have there sort of been particular, I guess, light bulb moments? You mentioned a couple of them, I guess, already, that sort of caused you to kind of reflect on your career and think about those different directions. And if so, what were they?
I think it was a bit of a mixture between sort of what I experienced at university, but also then what I've experienced at work. So I think definitely with university, in terms of the fact that I was really enjoying those modules where it was looking more at the broader spectrum instead of the younger end of childhood, that I really did like that. And especially going and working in a pupil referral unit, I think that was an absolute light bulb moment, that I knew this was like, this sunk into me, this is the age group that I'm feeling like I really could support with and help make a difference to. And then I think in work, I've been very, very fortunate working for an organisation like the Growth Company. They really are a supportive organisation, and if you've got an idea or if you want to try something, as long as they can facilitate it, they really will, and they'll help you to get onto that. I never in a million years thought of looking at partnership and integration, but it was they'd seen those skills in me and given me that opportunity to try it, see how I got on, got involved with it, and that ended up opening up a world of doors, and I was like, I really enjoy this is great. And so I think it's been that, and as well, I'd sort of from that, I'd really say to people that don't be afraid to ask for those opportunities and make yourself aware that you want to try something new. Of course, not every job, not every company is going to be able to offer that, but especially if you express that interest, you show, I've seen this, I think that sounds really interesting to me. If an opportunity comes up, could I do a piece of work on that? It puts it in that your manager, your supervisor, whoever it is mind, and it opens up their eyes to potentially seeing those opportunities and looking where you can fit in things, and then you get that feel for it, like, is this right for me? Do I enjoy that? What's the, is this something I want to do going forward? And from that, you end up being able to really sort of confirm a career direction without being in that stuck point of, I don't know what I want to do, because at least you are moving forward, but you might do a bit of zigzagging along the way.
No, absolutely, as we all do, as you say. And I mean, you've also mentioned there, obviously, that real benefit of having sort of supportive people around you when you're in that process of making kind of career decisions. Are there any sort of other people within, I guess, your career so far that have been particularly significant to you or have had that kind of impact, as you said?
I think there's been a few people. I think two are definitely my parents. Have been, I'm not joking in that I've been very lucky in that they've been my number one supporters throughout everything. They really have been there to sort of push me and give me that freedom to try different things, but also that was there growing up. They gave me that if I wanted to roll with something, they would help me roll with that. So I think that as well gave me the confidence that when I was going into the world of work, that I felt confident asking, well, can I give that a go? Can I try that? Because I'd already been doing that throughout my development, my growing up and everything. There was also there's a friend of my mum and dad's. She's called Nikki Pattison, and she is just downright and one of the most incredible women I've ever met in my entire life. And I've grown up with her being in my life, and the wisdom that woman has is extraordinary, and especially about engaging with people and working with people and how to get people on board with your idea, but that's still the same of, really understanding and appreciating what they're wanting. And, things right down to, I remember she was, we were on a stand at a fair. I was helping my mum out, and she'd come as well. And I'd gone up to someone and I said, oh, can I help you? And they were like, oh no, I'm fine and stuff. And she came over to me and said, don't do that. Don't go up and ask, because they're just gonna say no. Just go and start a conversation with that person. Just go up and say, oh, they're lovely, aren't they? Have you had a look at these? And it's amazing how much then, instead of that, no, thank you, that conversation comes and you build a rapport with someone. And it's been little things like that I've had that have ended up, I've pulled into everything and have become a way of how I engage with things. Like I've had participants I've worked with that have been really difficult, and I often joke that I'll just talk to them until they talk back. And it is, I really try to engage people, and I think this is why I've had quite a lot of success with building these relationships with not just people that I've got in my class, but also with partners and people in the community and organizations and things like that. And then finally, I'd have to give a bit of a shout out to my current colleague, Tim Jeffries. He was originally the person when I started at the growth company who was doing integration, who moved on to a different contract, and he really supported me, showed me the ropes when I started taking on those extra responsibilities. No question was ever too much trouble, and he's sort of go on to sort of encourage me and support me onto the next steps, and go, oh yeah, you could do this, well, I really think, and now that we're both in the same role, it's he's again just been another absolute wonderful asset. He really is like supportive. He helps you out with anything that you like. Again, it's that nothing's too much trouble. And he was when this role came available and I was speaking to him about it, he was like, you know what, no, we could see from day one, I think it's a really good opportunity. So he's been a very good influence while I've been here.
Wow, fantastic shout outs. And yeah, as you say, real illustration of the power of people in your career, to influence and impact in different ways. I mean, Emily, you've already shared some absolutely fantastic advice and reflection so far sort of from your career journey. But we end the podcast kind of as always with our underrated careers advice section. So this is an opportunity, if you have any particular nuggets of wisdom from your career to date, to share with current Huddersfield students or graduates or anyone else that might be listening or watching. Any underrated careers advice you might like to share with us today?
So Steve Bartlett shared a video. I'm trying to think of the name of the gentleman that was on it. I know his last name's John Keeve, but he was essentially, what he was saying was that don't ever be afraid to be the dumbest person in the room, essentially, and I really do iterate that sentiment, that it's amazing what you do learn from others, and being that, I think there's been times where I'll even profess myself, I've gone into something, people have been talking, and I've gone, oh, no, I'm way out of my depth here. This is too much for me. But I've not been able to back out, and I cannot get how glad I am I didn't, because it's amazing how much you pick up. And there's been times where people have been talking about stuff and I've not really known what they've talked about. And I've just said to the person next to me, oh, what are they on about? And this person's gone, oh, well, actually, it's this. And then all of a sudden it makes sense. And it's that if you just stay around people and in situations where you know everything, you feel really comfortable, you don't learn, you don't get to that next step. And it's absolutely fine. Nobody ever expects someone new to be the master of everything. And it's just having that confidence to say, right, don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that graph means. What does that word translate to in English? Any of that. It's because people will help you. People will support you. That's likely that they've all had support at some point in their career. So people want to give back, and don't be intimidated by those situations where you feel I'm out of my depth, or I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't know what they're talking about, because you will get there where you know everything, and that you do know, and that you are one of those people that someone else is coming to going, what does that mean? And what's this? And what does that graph say? And things like that. So, really do be that, don't shy away from those opportunities, and it's amazing what they end up leading to, because you end up meeting people, and then that could end up being your next jump, or your next zigzag, or your next moving forward.
Absolutely. And I think, you're so right there, that there's often that perception, I think, of it sort of almost being, embarrassing or shameful to admit that you don't know something, but actually that curiosity is such an admirable quality, isn't it? And most people, I think, do see it that way. It's very humbling, and I think people actually appreciate it, rather than you feeling as though people go in with that, I guess, unearned confidence where I don't know any of this, but I'm just going to kind of try and blag it. So,
yeah, definitely. And because those people very quickly become unstuck, and they very quickly become stuck, where, you're sort of doing it in reverse, you're becoming unstuck. And you end up as well building those relationships with people that end up lasting a very long time. There's people that I, spoke to, and I said, well, can you help me here? And there's still people I connect with, and I link in with, and everything like that. So, it's amazing how just, yes, it's scary. Yes, it can give you that feeling in your stomach, but it really is beneficial, and it can really help you in where you want to go.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, it's that importance of building relationships, isn't it, throughout your career? And I guess kind of on that note, it's a really nice point to sort of end the podcast. And I guess to ask you, if we have students or graduates who might be kind of listening or watching the podcast today, who might be interested in connecting potentially with you and starting to build their own relationship, where's the best place to find you?
So I am on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect and drop me a message.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emily. Well, what we'll do is we'll make sure that those are kind of flashing up on the screen for those that are watching the podcast, and we'll put them in the notes if people are just listening. But that brings us really nicely to the end of the podcast. A massive thank you for joining us, becoming the latest member of the Hud Grad Club, and sharing your career story. And obviously wish you all the best of luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye. Enjoyed the podcast? Then go to the University of Huddersfield YouTube channel for all of our future episodes. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to hit the bell button for notifications. If you'd like to be involved in the Hud Grad Club podcast moving forward, please get in touch with us on alumni@hud.ac.uk.